Chapter 441. To the Black King. 2. Tomorrow? Why don't you spend more time with my daughter? Mother, am I still a child? Why do you keep saying such weird things? Talaris coughed lightly as Cirrus shot her a sharp look. It was unusual for Cirrus to speak so brusquely. It was just a suggestion. You shouldn't talk to your mother like that, you know? And to avoid situations like today, we should get reinforcements as soon as possible. You can't always protect Tychon, mother. You're absolutely right, Cirrus Nim. When Jean replied, Cirrus's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. It's not that I dislike it. Since we are allies, it's natural that we protect each other. But that doesn't mean my mother or I will always be waiting in the hidden palace. So we need alternative options. Cirrus spoke, making it even more apparent that they needed to gather forces to protect Tychon as soon as possible. I can't always rely on luck like this. The fact that there were no casualties other than damage to the team and facilities during Luton and the Exiles' attack was almost like divine intervention. Of course, it was also the result of Jean and his comrades constantly being on guard against enemy invasions. If Talaris had arrived a little late or had been absent, they wouldn't have been able to defend Tychon so flawlessly. In the future, enemies would surely come prepared, calculating even the possibility of the transfer gate as Luton did. Runcandle still can't attack directly, but there will be those, like the Elder Council, trying to bring external forces to attack us. Furthermore, Kinslow, Zippel, and Vermont. At least Kinslow still maintained a somewhat friendly stance toward Jean, so the possibility of him suddenly turning hostile was low. I don't like this fact, but it's not bad in terms of the security of my colleagues. On the other hand, Zippel and Vermont were completely different. They could attack Tychon at any time without warning. Tychon, under the name of the Free City, had essentially given up the neutrality it had maintained for a long time. It's likely that, especially Vermont, sees Tychon as a thorn in the side. Jean recalled the unpleasant encounter with the Emperor. The Emperor hinted at having hidden forces and proposed an alliance, but Jean had firmly rejected it. Moreover, as Tychon was also the city of the exiled Prince Kashmir, so the Emperor might attack this place at any time. My enemies within Runcandle and the Emperor might form a temporary alliance. It had only been a few days since the exile's death, and there had been no significant changes between the Elder Council, Rosa, and Joshua. Mother is the one holding the reins in the family. There might be some kind of deal between Mother and the Elder Council, or Mother might be unable to decide what action to take against the Elder Council. It was a dilemma for Rosa. If she attacked the Elder Council, she would, in fact, acknowledge that she had purged the Execution Knights long ago. Of course, she could bring up the pretext that the Black Sword Association had not properly punished the knights who had committed treason years ago, but it was difficult to cover it up given the atmosphere of the family. However, letting it go without any action was too important a matter. Whether it was an unjustified purge or not, it still meant that the Elder Council had not properly carried out the orders of the acting matriarch years ago. In the end, Rosa had to impose some kind of punishment on the Elder Council. If the punishment was too severe, there would be strong opposition, and if it was too lenient, the authority of the acting matriarch would weaken. The former could lead to a complete split between the Elder Council and Joshua's faction, while the latter could be a violation of the family's law. Jordan had his ambitions, but outwardly he seemed closer to Joshua's faction. And Rosa was pushing an image of Joshua as a prominent next patriarch who had already taken control of the Black Knights and the Elder Council simultaneously. Meanwhile, threatening competitors like the 12th Flagbearer and the 3rd Flagbearer had emerged, so if the Elder Council turned completely against Joshua, it would be a painful blow to that image. Although Mother holds the reins, the Elder Council has more options. The Elders could align with older brother Dyphus or Sister Mary, or even betray Runcandle and align with external forces. In other words, the Garden of Swords had entered a new phase due to this incident. In other words, amid the rapidly changing situation, what mattered most was victory. And for victory, the safety of allies always took priority. I'll have 2 of the 7 swords from the Hidden Palace, Ryu and He-Ten, stationed here from now on. Talaris's pupils dilated. She didn't expect Cirrus to come up with such a radical suggestion. Clap, clap. Talaris clapped to celebrate the progress they had made, and even Luton joined in, following the cues. The small beast men also joined the applause, and even Murakin got involved, but only Jean and Cirrus didn't understand the reason. Cirrus Nim, thank you for considering this. Sure. I think I need to rest for now. Cirrus stood up from her seat, and Talaris poked Murakin in the side. Ahem. What do you think, handsome brother? It would be a big problem if my future son-in-law marries someone else later. Don't you think? Are you threatening the kid? Not necessarily. Anyway, about tomorrow. The Black King said he would meet with you, right? I plan to go see him. There's also someone peculiar I need to investigate in the Black King's mercenaries. Someone peculiar? A rookie mercenary named Zephyrin, but Murakin and Quicantelnim believe there's a high probability she's a demon dragon. The presumed Kinzalo demon leader and the Legends golems, the sealed Smarian Proc under the Phantom Fortress and the demon dragon, following the demon men and the emperor who proposed an alliance. Indeed, times have changed. In my younger days, such strange things didn't roam like this. And your greatest enemy, the second flag-bearer, seems to have someone like the prophet, right? These are dangerous times. Talaris shrugged, weary. She was aware of most of the information Jean had recently acquired. Among them, there's something I can guess about Smarian Proc. What is it? The power of chaos. What is that? Jin's pupils narrowed. It's a strange power that occasionally appears in the world, like the one your younger sister, Yona Runcandle, carries within. Have you ever thought it's unfair? What? Was I the only one looking out for you? I told you before, when you bathe or do things like that. Not that. You've been treated like a killer doll all along, since you were so young. It was terrible and absurd, even considering you're a pure-blood Runcandle. Is that bad? It's bad. Have you never committed murder, younger brother? That's not the point. I was born this way from the beginning, so there's no need to be sad. Born this way, what does that mean? Jean recalled the conversation he had with Yona in the past. Since then, she hadn't sincerely told him what kind of power she was born with. Not only older sister Yona, but even Bouvard and Margiela Ivlianos from Kinzalo have special powers. Does that mean it's the power of chaos? Yes, can be innate or acquired. I don't know the details, but one thing for sure is that the owner of that power can be consumed by chaos at any time. Consumed, you mean? Jean remembered the sealed Smarian Proc. It means turning into a monster like Smarian Proc. I've also faced people who changed after being contaminated by chaos in my younger days. Talaris paused for a moment. Unwanted memories that she didn't want to recall resurfaced. Talaris suppressed the bitter and painful memories that arose for a while and then spoke. On the other hand, I've seen people who ended their lives with elegance, without letting themselves be consumed by chaos. Based on my experience, it seems that transforming into a monster is related to the owner's will and the size of the chaos they possess. Talaris Nim, speak. Could it be that my father is also related to that power called chaos? That was a secret known only to a few. Talaris had no intention of revealing so much at first, but now that it had come to this, she saw no need to deny it. Yes, Siren has also been fighting against that power for a long time. How did you find out? Latanim told me about a conversation between my father and Smarian Proc. I deduced it from that conversation. Jean couldn't help but feel deeply disturbed. The idea that Siren and Smarian shared the same matter had been a foreseeable problem from the moment he first encountered Smarian in the Phantom Fortress. But could it be that the issue wasn't exclusive to Siren and Smarian? Older sister Yona and my father too. Could they suddenly turn into monsters at some point? Just imagining such a scenario tore at his heart. Given the immense power they possessed, it seemed unlikely that the size of the chaos they harbored was small. Jean thought it must be different from people like Bouvard and Margiela. Siren acquired it and Yona's is innate. That's what I heard directly from your father. So that's why my father is obsessed with the Black Sea. Yes, but even though I'm an intimate friend of his, Siren didn't tell me everything about his chaos, so I have nothing more to say. Just this is enough. The important thing is that Smarian Proc must be eliminated. Once chaos consumes a person, it only grows stronger over time. The power of the sealed Smarian was getting stronger. It needed to be eliminated before it became something unmanageable. By the way, handsome brother, it seems you have no idea about the power of chaos. It seems like something you should know more about, right? Why this power disrupts the balance of the world, what its foundation is. You don't know anything about it. All eyes turned to Murakan. He shook his head as if he didn't know. I don't know. Maybe it disappeared from my memory. I don't even know if I never knew it in the first place. I hate to admit it, but it seems like a question worth asking when I meet my sister. Sigh. Murakan let out a frustrated sigh, and then added, Kid, before you meet the Black King's mercenaries, let's make a brief stop at that place. Chapter 442. To the Black King, 3. The next day, Luton headed to the Holy Kingdom, while Jean and Murakan went to the Mila Kingdom. They were going to visit Grace Shields, Misha, ultra-secret tavern known as the Tabernacle. The bartender recognized the two immediately but gave them the same response as the last time they visited. The mistress is not here at the moment. She wasn't here even when we came a few months ago. When will she be back? The mistress hasn't returned since you two last visited. It was customary for Misha to be absent for a month or two. She not only represented Sadaret but also had many hideouts besides the Tabernacle. However, it was almost unheard of for her not to visit the Tabernacle, even when the seasons changed. Did she leave a separate message for us? No. It's been a long time since we had a case like this, so we're also worried about the mistress. When she returns, please let her know to contact us here. Jean handed a paper with the address and a small purse with gold coins, and the bartender nodded with a dignified attitude. Until dusk, the two crossed through various transfer gates, visiting the other hideouts Misha had informed them about. Once again, they couldn't find her anywhere. Haha. They say there's nothing as useless as dog poop when it comes to medicine. Murakan seemed satisfied with not having to meet her. Aren't you too happy? There might be reasons to worry a bit, you know? What's there to worry about? It's not a big deal if a dragon leaves her post for a few months. It's not like it's been decades. She's probably snooping around somewhere. I have a strange feeling about this, said Jean, and Murakan snorted. A strange feeling? Well, it might not be so bad if some powerful human beats her to death. But the problem is, there probably aren't many people in the world who can defeat her like that. As Murakan said, it was safe to say that there was no one who could catch Misha. During the 1,000 years Murakan had been asleep, Misha had never been caught, even while fighting the Spectre Corps. You're right, but Jean had so many things he wanted to know from Misha as soon as possible. Things like Timar's tomb, Kinzelo's leader, the demon dragon, Chaos, Valeria, and more. Even if Misha couldn't explain everything clearly, she could provide some clues. Especially when it came to Valeria and her record device restoration, only she could give the most appropriate explanations. Don't worry. Let's go look for the Black King's mercenaries. The Black King's hideout was in the Bice Kingdom, an unprotected territory in the central continent. The Bice Kingdom was a minor country that didn't belong to any of the three prominent factions. Now 4, Zippel, Runcandle, Vermont, Kinzelo. Although the royal family and the army were maintained, no one actually considered the ruler of the Bice Kingdom to be the royal family. It was a common belief that the Black King's mercenaries and their leader were the true rulers of the Bice Kingdom. It was a natural consensus. The Black King's mercenaries had enough power to destroy the Bice Kingdom with just a portion of their 3rd division. It was widely believed that the Black King's mercenaries didn't take over the kingdom just to maintain their identity as a mercenary force. Well, these guys are something. What do you mean? Normally, when a military organization like this is established in a small country, they tend to take control of the royal family and exploit and oppress civilians. The Black King's mercenaries were far from that. They provided substantial support to both the royal family and civilians, to the point where it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were actually nurturing the Bice Kingdom. As a result, the Bice Kingdom was perceived as a pleasant place to live, and immigration requests never ceased. It was a place bustling with the footsteps of academy professors, scholars, and students due to well-preserved ancient ruins and artifacts. It goes against the typical image associated with mercenaries obsessed with money. These seemingly kind and cute guys, indeed. If they become uncooperative, we can persuade them kindly. Kindly, huh? We'll see about that. Jean responded with a mocking smile. Why? Is there a problem? The fact that the Black King's mercenaries manage and take responsibility for the Bice Kingdom isn't because they're kind-hearted philanthropists. This Bice Kingdom is a hostage warehouse for the Black King's mercenaries. As Jean said, the Black King's mercenaries were using the Bice Kingdom as a hostage warehouse and the ultimate shield to maintain neutrality. For any major faction to forcibly subjugate and absorb the Black King's mercenaries, they would have to trample the Bice Kingdom. It would lead to the deaths of numerous residents, and the destruction of ancient ruins would be inevitable. When Jean explained this, Murakan's eyes widened. I see. They are really clever and cunning. Although I don't particularly like the name Black King. Of course, the Black King's mercenaries could maintain their neutrality without the Bice Kingdom, but having more options at their disposal was always preferable. Well, no hostage has been killed since I was born. We're almost there. You should transform. Murakan transformed into a cat and landed on Jin's shoulder. Jean had altered his face and dyed it red using cosmetics from the Golden Snow tribe, making him unrecognizable to the guardians and civilians of the Bice Kingdom. However, Jean was convinced that someone from the Black King's mercenaries would recognize him if he moved through the Bice Kingdom in this form. Morka and the members of the 3rd Division couldn't forget this appearance. When it was revealed that the black cat Jean had when he departed for the Storm Castle was actually Murakan, the story became a topic of discussion among the Black King's mercenaries. For quite some time, after all, they couldn't believe that the young emperor carried just an ordinary cat with him. The city was frequented by outsiders, so Jean and Murakan didn't attract too much attention. Jean wandered around the bustling city while observing billboards and bulletins hanging around. He subtly emitted an aura that those below 6 stars couldn't perceive. Before long, as expected, Jean felt a mercenary approaching him. That cat. Don't tell me it's you. He seemed unsure, but the mercenary soon convinced himself that the feline in front of him was none other than Jean Runcandle, whom he had directly escorted on a protection mission some time ago. Mr. Lat-M. Jean spoke before the mercenary could say more. The mercenary seemed surprised and could only look at Jean in astonishment. He didn't expect Jean to remember his name. I didn't know you remembered my name. I'm ashamed of myself for not recognizing you right away. Lat-M hurriedly responded with a silent bow. I remember you as the one who was often by Murkanim's side back then. It's good to see you. As they shook hands, Lat-M realized the truth of the rumors circulating about Jean in recent times. He also felt secretly impressed by the immense power emanating from Jin's grip. You haven't come here for nothing, have you? Do you have business with our leader? Lat-M explicitly mentioned the leader without referring to any other superior, showing how he assessed Jin's stature. Yes. Fortunately, the leader is in the mountain fort. I will personally guide you there. However, please understand that there is another guest who arrived before you. The 12th flag-bearer of Runcandle is in a position where he can meet the leader at any time without prior notice. However, Jean couldn't meet the leader without considering another guest. Jean deduced information from Lat-M's words. The other guest is someone of higher rank than me. And he was right. At that moment, there was a guest of higher rank than Jean in the Black King's Mountain. Therefore, Jean had to wait until that person's affairs concluded. Who could it be? There weren't many people who immediately came to Jin's mind. Jean didn't care about this peculiar guest as long as it wasn't someone meddling in his affairs. Of course, I understand. Thank you, please follow me. Following Lat-M, Jean arrived at the Black King's Mountain and it was close to midnight. Although it didn't exude an overwhelmingly powerful aura like the Phantom Fortress, There was a unique energy in the rugged mountain range where the fortress was located. Visitors coming to the Black King's Mountain were neither guided nor escorted. If you couldn't traverse the mountains on your own, you'd have to be transported by someone. Looking quite pitiful. Traveling on a dragon or airship was the only way to maintain dignity. However, there were only a handful of people in the world capable of soaring the skies of the Black King's Mountain hideout. Finally, when Jean beheld the spectacular view of the Black King's Mountain, he couldn't help but be impressed. The deeply carved mountain slopes gave the impression of being excavated by giants, and towering over them were huge and dark castles. There also seemed to be fortified walls. It looked as if they were prepared for a dragon invasion. Rows of massive mana cannons pointed towards the sky, and various magical devices and traps twisted like serpents. The Garden of Swords seems quite straightforward when I see something like this, Jean thought as he marveled at the formidable defenses of the Black King's Mountain. Entering the central castle, a row of mercenaries in formation saluted. The news of Jin's visit had already spread throughout the mountain hideout even before he began to climb. "Welcome, Jean Runcandle Nim. I'm glad to see you again," Morka greeted Jean. As they headed to the reception room, Jean occasionally searched for that girl, Zephyrin. Just when Jean was curious, he heard Zephyrn's unique and lively voice coming from ahead. She was right in front of the reception room of the Black King's leader. "I'm sorry, second captain." "Sorry? Is that all? Do you know how much trouble you'll be in when the third captain finds out? What were you thinking, showing such disrespect in front of the leader's guests?" "I didn't know." "No, and the leader didn't even call you, so why did you come to greet the guest? Are you shameless? Also, why the hell do you want to meet the first flag bearer of Runcandle? Don't hit me, please. Oh, my head. Can someone please move her out of my sight?" Just like the first time he saw her at the Sword Emperor Castle, Zephyrin was causing trouble again and was visibly agitated. "Oh, I'm sorry, Jean Nim. I'm showing such rudeness again. It's okay. What do you think you're doing, huh? Zephyrin, come here right now." Zephyrin ran over in a hurry, and Jean couldn't help but smile. Jean and Murakan couldn't take their eyes off the enormous sword axe strapped to her back, which seemed larger than her body. Chapter 443. To the Black King. 4. Thuck. The thick handle of the axe sword struck Zephyrin on the back of the head. It wasn't done by someone else. It was an incident that occurred when she bowed before Morka. Ugh! Watching Zephyrin clutch her neck, Morka ended up hitting her chest with frustration. It was not at all clear where these kinds of problems disrupting the discipline of the 3rd Division were coming from. "Sorry, Captain. If you're sorry, your mercenary career is over." "Oh, but you're Jean Runcandle Nim." Zephyrin looked at Jean with sparkling eyes. To Jean and Murakan, it seemed strange that this foolish-looking girl could be a demon dragon. However, Murakan carefully sniffed the scent emanating from her. "Murakan, why are you so absent-minded? Oh, you've always been a carefree guy, haven't you? I don't expect to hear those kinds of words from you. Didn't you smell something off about that human?" A conversation between Murakan and Quicantle in the banquet hall of Sword Emperor Castle. Zephyrin had a strong and dreadful dragon blood, scent that human senses couldn't recognize. And it was a dense and horrifying dragon blood scent. It was an odor that came from various types of mixed blood. Yeah. Suddenly, Murakan emitted a threatening sound and bristled his fur. He had smelled something he didn't recognize in the banquet hall. Therefore, Murakan was ready to scratch Zephyrin's face with his sharp claws at any moment. "Wow!" Zephyrin jumped back in surprise. Morka understood that Murakan was showing his displeasure with Zephyrin's appearance. "I'm sorry, Jean Nim, Murakan Nim. The leader is still busy with the previous guest and his affairs. My subordinates will inform you when it's your turn." Morka spoke and tried to suppress his boiling anger as much as possible. Shortly after, he took Zephyrin and disappeared somewhere, leaving only the mercenaries, Jean, and Murakan in the empty hallway of the reception room. "Why did you just do that? Did you smell what Quicantle Nim mentioned last time?" "Nya. Transform and speak like a person." Puff. "Yes, it was that scent. If Quicantle hadn't mentioned it, maybe I wouldn't have noticed it again because of the fragrance. What do you think? I think that woman might be a demon dragon. Yes. Well, it could just be the scent of the weapon, as Quicantle suggested. If Zephyrin was a demon dragon, then the two previous encounters might not have been mere coincidences. In that case, Zephyrin's only reason for approaching might be the Rontelgius magic tome. I heard something like she wants to meet the first flag bearer. According to Murka, the reason Zephyrin carried a battle axe she couldn't even use properly was her admiration for Luna. If she were a simple human, one might think she's a bit eccentric. But suddenly, Jean remembered how Luna obtained the Orgel pendant. My sister said she got the pendant by defeating a demon in the past. A pendant obtained by defeating a demon, a magic tome obtained by killing a demon, and a demon dragon. They were puzzle pieces that seemed to fit perfectly. If Zephyrin is a demon dragon, then the three encounters may not have been mere coincidences. In that case, Jean thought that Zephyrin might intentionally approach them just to get the magic tome. Let's ask her directly if she's a demon dragon when we finish our business with the Black King leader. I didn't ask her at the banquet because it would be awkward then. Yes, that's better. But she may not tell us directly. Don't worry. There's a way to confirm it. And if she turns out to be a demon dragon, we might also find out about your brother's connection to Rontelgius. We'll squeeze out all the information we can. And what if she's stronger than us? There's no dragon stronger than this Murakin in the world. Well, yes. I haven't fully recovered my powers yet, so I guess it's possible. Anyway, if things end up like that, we'll escape. Jean shrugged. By the way, the guy inside seems to be Runcandle, considering what Zephyrin said about wanting to meet the first flag bearer. He's probably one of the main flag bearers or his representative. I think he's from the second flag bearer. Joshua needed a force to replenish what he lacked after the recent conflicts within the Elder Council. He also needed to demonstrate his ability to recruit and unite neutral forces as the next patriarch. But the Black King's mercenaries have maintained neutrality for a long time, so recruiting them without substantial compensation is almost impossible. Regardless of who the person meeting with the Black King leader was, if they had come not for a simple contract but for recruitment, there was a possibility that they were well prepared for negotiations. The servants brought a simple refreshment and tea. The two enjoyed it quietly while waiting for the meeting to begin. The door to the reception room opened around 3 in the morning. We will meet again tomorrow morning, Black King leader. Understood. Voices of the Black King leader and the guest were heard. It seemed they planned to continue the conversation tomorrow. The person who exited the reception room was wearing a robe and a hood that covered their entire body. Jean immediately recognized it wasn't one of the flag bearers but their representative. The man also noticed Jean and Murakin. He tried to pass by them without a word, but Jean called out to him. Hey! The hooded man stopped and turned to look at Jean. You're the guy from earlier, right? The guy from earlier. The Black Knight who had tried to kidnap Dante at the Emperor's Sword Banquet. Jean was sure the person in the robe was the same. I was a bit confused, but now that you're approaching, I'm sure. Claw users usually have a distinctive way of walking. Should I say they have a unique posture? Claws were not commonly used weapons, but Jean had spent a lot of time with Gilly and was familiar with their characteristics. It seems like the second flag bearer had something very important to discuss if he sent a Black Knight. Tell me what happened inside. I also need to meet the Black King leader. You're still as bold as ever. You're not afraid. Probably because you have a black dragon by your side. Well, I think I'm the same whether I'm alone or accompanied. Could you have come here alive if things had gone like back then? The man turned away without answering. He judged that he might get involved with Murakin if he kept talking to Jean. Tell that to the Black Knights. I'm always open. The Black Helmets will never become your sword. Keep that in mind. After the Black Knight left, the mercenaries signaled Jean to enter the Black King leader's reception room. Please, come in. Just in case, Murakin. What's wrong? Even if the Black King leader isn't as courteous as you expect, don't scowl at him or try to hit him. Am I a fool? I'm just concerned. TCH. The fact that such a grand space unfolded at the end of a not-so-wide hallway was astonishing. The reception room was impressively grand, with large windows letting in moonlight and starlight from the imposing ceiling. It was a surreal sight that didn't seem to fit with the dark profession of mercenaries. Below it, the Black King leader, Valkaz Kron, sat at his desk, welcoming the two men. Amila, the great mercenary from the Gaifa Islands, Valkaz Kron, the Black King leader, and Lotta Proc, the leader of the Phantom Legion. Among the three top mercenaries in the world, Amila and Valkaz competed for the top spot. Certainly, he emits a much more powerful vibe compared to Lotanim. The first impression Jean had of Valkaz was that he seemed taller even when sitting. Jean didn't know much about him beyond the fact that he had achieved some legendary feats before becoming the leader and had built an impressive reputation as a mercenary. He had a rough idea of his personality, but that was about it. Both in his past life and the current one, Jean had never encountered Valkaz, so he didn't have much information about him. Valkaz wasn't a public figure with much known information. Valkaz Kron. It's more romantic than I thought. Really? Should I say he cares a lot about his family? That's why the Black King's mercenaries are generally friendly, despite being the best mercenaries in the world. I see. The problem is that, aside from his family, he treats the rest of humans as clients who only serve to pay money or living meatballs. Before reaching Black King Mountain, Talaris had said that about Valkaz. Although Zephyrin makes those mistakes, it usually ends with a sermon. Is it because he values his subordinates so much? Or maybe Valkaz also has suspicions about Zephyrin and ordered to keep a close watch on her. The latter seemed more likely. As much as he valued his subordinates, the Black King's mercenaries were known for being a disciplined and sharp organization. Valkaz raised his hand and began to speak. Welcome, 12th Flagbearer of Runcandle. It's an honor to meet you, Valkaz Nim. Thank you for the hospitality. Hospitality might be an exaggeration. And the one beside you, is that the great black dragon? Murakan nodded, despite his somewhat disrespectful tone. Fortunately, Valkaz didn't go beyond that level of rudeness. My subordinates have been talking quite a bit about you. It seems escorting you when you were young is still a fond memory for the 3rd Division. Is that so? And the 12th Flagbearer of Runcandle is probably the hottest topic in the world right now, not only for my subordinates. It's impossible for stories not to circulate everywhere. I was also curious and wanted to meet you at least once. Jean and Valkaz smiled, and their gazes met. Somehow, Jean felt as if Valkaz was looking through him, trying to figure out why he had come and what kind of request he might have. And that feeling turned out to be true in a few seconds. You've come to me most likely to entrust me with the task of protecting the Tychon Free City, haven't you? Or am I wrong? Jean was internally surprised but nodded without showing it. It seems I accidentally sent a letter with the details of the request in advance. Yes, you're right, Valkaz Nim. The need for Tychon protection measures was a matter that most powerful figures in the world knew to some extent. Valkaz couldn't ignore it either. Above all, Valkaz was currently more aware of the matter, given that Joshua's representative had just visited him. Unfortunately, it seems difficult to accept that request. But you haven't even heard the conditions. It's true, but I mean to say you came a step too late. Joshua hadn't sent the Black Knight to hire the Black King's mercenaries for a mission, etc. He had sent the Black Knight to prevent the Black King's mercenaries from accepting Jin's request. Chapter 444. To the Black King. 5. Jean reminded the Black Knight he had encountered in the hallway. He decided to meet with the Black King leader again in the morning when he left the reception room. In typical cases, one would think of the process of drafting a contract and then spend some social time before proceeding. However, the other person was not just anyone, he was a Black Knight. A person like a Black Knight wouldn't be here chatting if the deal had already been closed. This wasn't that kind of place. Jean could be sure of it. Valkaz had not yet accepted the request from the Black Knight on behalf of Joshua. However, there were many reasons why the Black King's mercenaries might not accept Jin's request. In the current world situation, an individual like Jean Runcandle was like a poison chalice. If you drank from it thoughtlessly, it was very likely that you would clash with the true maximal authorities of the world. Although Jean was one of the superior beings among the supernovas, it was still uncertain whether he could break through the solid defenses of the world rulers. No one thought so unless someone was close to Jean or knew him well. As remarkable as his achievements and successes were, miracles always came to an end someday. Most of the world's population couldn't imagine or believe that miracles would continue. Most still considered Joshua Runcandle the next master of the Garden of Swords, and this perception even extended to figures like Valkas Kron. It seems he doesn't want to incur Joshua's resentment by accepting my request. It wasn't just Joshua. Jean had left an indelible mark on Zippel after the incident of the Holy Kingdom. Recently, there were rumors that his relationship with the imperial family was not good either. This was because the only thing the emperor granted Jean after the meeting was the Golden Crown. Moreover, the emperor had even ordered that his encounter with Jean should not appear on the front pages of the Vermont Bulletin. It was not considered a significant event. In other words, Jean had poor relations not only with the future patriarch of the Runcandle and Zippel family but also with the imperial family, to the point where it wouldn't be surprising if he found himself in a dangerous situation. Valkas expressed all these reasons in one sentence. "You're too late." He conveyed his clear intention to decline without hurting the other party's feelings. Joshua also made a direct request: don't help Jean, without diminishing Valkas's pride. He subtly warned Valkas by merely sending the Black Knight. Both showed a stance befitting strong and experienced players in power. However, I can't stand idly by in this situation. Although Jean felt a little irritated, he had to seize the opportunity. In moments like this, denying their rejection is a poor method and only has negative effects. Jean needed a sure card to change Valkas's mind. He had to make the other side willing to become a temporary ally of Jean despite all the risks. Because the protection of Tychon was not just any request. But at this moment, Jean didn't have that card. Jean didn't know much about Valkas Kron, and he wasn't particularly cooperative, so the possibility of creating such a card in the near future was slim. Zephyrin. There was information suggesting that the troublemaker of the Black King's mercenaries could be a demon dragon, but it wasn't especially valuable. If he accused her without any evidence and later she was declared innocent, it could have serious repercussions. Should I try to recruit Black King's mercenaries after Joshua and Zippel's true nature is fully exposed? Jean quickly reached a conclusion. To begin with, he hadn't come with high expectations. Of course, Jean was confident. In the not-too-distant future, either the Black King's mercenaries would come to him first, or Valkas would regret not advancing the conversation today. I should go visit Amila, the great mercenary of Gaifa Island. Seeing that the Black Knight is here, Joshua might have already sent someone to Amila. For Joshua, it was undoubtedly a rare opportunity to deal Jean a significant blow. It wasn't a mortal blow, but it was annoying enough, like a small thorn stuck in the foot. If both the Black King and the great mercenaries didn't help, then the task of protecting Tychon would overly depend on the hidden palace. I can't do anything if I arrive a step too late, Jean spoke calmly, and Valkas narrowed his eyes. Well, surprisingly, you're willing to back down. It seems the rumors about me haven't been very favorable if you add the word surprising. Well, it's not exactly like that. It's just that I hear many stories about you achieving what you want. It seems you're especially liked by the 3rd Division. Valkas poured himself a drink from a drawer as he spoke, indicating that they could have something light since there was no need to talk about work between them. Valkas showed his gratitude in his own way. Although he couldn't accept the request, Jean wasn't displeasing to him as a person. In fact, Valkas thought that if Jean were the 2nd flag-bearer instead of the 12th, they could have joined forces at any time. Thank you, Valkas Nim. Do you want a drink? Black Dragon? It's good liquor. Sure, pour me one. The 3 glasses clinked lightly, creating a pleasant sound. Jean didn't believe the situation was so bad. The request had already taken a wrong turn before being raised, so it wouldn't be surprising if he couldn't exchange a single word and had to leave. The dragons that have some history with us say that you were the strongest being in the past, Murakanim. Although holding the position of Black King leader, Valkas never forgot simple ways to please those of higher status. He intentionally started the conversation with a somewhat disrespectful tone at first, sometimes lowering expectations at the beginning could make the conversation even more enjoyable. It's true if you mean the sky. I am the strongest and the best in history. Oh, so the dragon stories were true. But it seems like you speak as if you had rivals on Earth. There were some who could be called nemeses. There were some who could be considered equals, but no one could clearly determine who was stronger. I think I would have won if we had fought to the end. I would have challenged you even now if I were in my prime, Murakanim. Facing a strong and historic figure is not an easy thing. Well, even in my time you would have been quite impressive. Haha, you're too kind. Valkas refilled Murakan's empty glass. He didn't lower himself excessively but satisfied the opponent's sense of superiority. Among all the humans I've met who are closest to being the strongest, you have the most exceptional awareness of the situation. In terms of individual power, Valkas had reached the level of 5 stars long ago. Such transcendent individuals were hard to find displaying this kind of behavior. It was due to the confidence they had, not having to worry about anyone's feelings or even stronger individuals or factions that couldn't touch them carelessly. Because if they did, they could only expect death. Valkas had something different from other 5 stars beings. He continued to act cautiously as a neutral party between the giant factions. He had his reasons despite being in a position where he could do as much as any other transcendent. The reason was simple. Valkas Kron, the Black King leader, cared deeply for his subordinates. In Valkas's opinion, there was no need for his subordinates to be senselessly sacrificed in conflicts between giant factions if he put in a little effort. Jean could see through Valkas's feelings. It wasn't difficult. Valkas wouldn't have shown such behavior if it weren't for his subordinates. I see why he initiated this drinking session with us. Jean kept understanding the meaning of this gathering. Clearly, this drinking session would continue until dawn, until Joshua's Black Knight returned to this reception room. Just as Joshua had subtly told Valkas not to get involved with Jean, Valkas also intended to express his intentions by deliberately showing the Black Knight that they were drinking together. He wouldn't openly challenge his request, but he would watch the growth of the 12th flag-bearer. That was the message Valkas wanted to convey to Joshua. Jean nodded to himself. I've learned something from this person, even if it was just a one-night encounter. Jean smoothly joined the conversation and started drinking. Murakan led the conversation, with Jean and Valkas intervening occasionally. Murakan discussed various topics, such as the greatest warriors and mages in history, the most prosperous era, the most peaceful one, the biggest differences between dragons and humans, life and death, apples and watermelons, the most beautiful women, and many more. Only after 10 in the morning did the topic shift to Zephyrin. How the hell did that weird creature join you? The brat says the Black King's mercenaries are the best in the world, but she seems a bit strange. She may seem eccentric, but she's a top-notch swordsman. She even claims to be self-taught, so I think she's a genius. What? Good with a sword? And she's a genius on top of that. She doesn't fully demonstrate her destructive power due to the lack of aura. She seems to have a condition where aura doesn't accumulate well from birth. I also consider her quite a rare and unusual individual. Shriek. Coincidentally, Zephyrin entered the reception room at that moment. She carried the same combat sword axe on her back that Jean had seen the night before. Next to her was the Black Knight. They were supposed to meet again in the morning. Although his face was hidden under the hood, he couldn't help but show a displeased expression at the scene with drinks. He hadn't anticipated that things would turn out like this. Leader, I brought the guest. Yes, Zephyrin. But I heard that today, the second captain would personally bring the guest. Why are you here? Oh, well, you see. Zephyrin shrugged with her characteristic lively and exaggerated gestures. And Jean, Murakan, and Valkas couldn't help but believe what they saw in the scene that followed. Kak. Suddenly, Zephyrin's hand pierced through the Black Knight's side. Originally aimed at his chest, thanks to the Black Knight's reaction, he was stabbed in the side. Zephyrin's purplish nails, which had grown significantly since the night before, now looked like poison-coated daggers, and the Black Knight desperately retreated, spitting blood. Ugh! Cough! Do you really need to know? You're about to meet death anyway. Leader. Chapter 445. Zephyrin 1. The hood of the Black Knight's robe was soaked in blood as it spilled outward. The poison from his nails was so potent that the wound on his side was already turning black. The Black Knight was no ordinary warrior despite his carelessness. Among the countless guardian knights of Runcandle, only 10 were allowed to wear the black helmet, and he retaliated immediately even in his wounded state. However, his claws, protruding from the sleeves of his robe, did not reach Zephyrin. He lunged for Zephyrин's throat, but the claws only left an empty trail in the air. Sakak! Once again, the Black Knight's claws clashed with Zephyrин's nails as she lunged. The Black Knight's body, weakened by the extreme poison, did not respond as it normally would. The Black Knight staggered backward after just one strike, then spat blood again as he retreated further. If the Black Knight had been alone, the battle would have been decided in that very moment. He was already severely injured, so he had no chance of withstanding Zephyrин's next assault. But Jean, Murakan, and Valkaz stepped forward simultaneously. What's going on? Their reactions were incredibly fast, but the three were confused. Most surprising to Jean was that the Black Knight had been defeated in a single blow. This is impossible even if he was careless. Unless she has skills comparable to Sister Yona or the Nameless King, or a battle prowess that surpasses the Black Knight. Skill and strength. Zephyrin might have only one of the two, or she might possess both. One thing was certain. She was a formidable adversary they had to face. Oh my, the Black Knight of Runcandle is quite remarkable. I had no idea he could avoid this. The lips of the Black Knight were turning pale blue, and he could only lick them and offer no response. He had no time to respond as he struggled to suppress the extreme poison coursing through his body. Zephyrin, you? Don't tell me you've done the same to the second captain. Originally, the second captain had decided to bring the Black Knight. Valkaz was primarily concerned for himself and his subordinates. The concern stemmed from the opinion that with the strength Zephyrin had just demonstrated, it was very possible for her to assassinate them before reaching here. Valkaz shot her a piercing look and Zephyrin responded. With a wide smile. I've already told you that you don't need to know, leader. My intention was to peacefully kill you, considering the bond we've created. But I have to kill you if you keep asking senseless questions. Murakan snorted upon hearing this. Quicantle was right. Hey woman, you're a demon dragon, aren't you? I was going to ask you anyway. So thanks for revealing your true identity first. Whoosh! Murakan transformed into his true form, and a dense shadow energy spread throughout the reception room. The reason you're acting so arrogant now is probably because of that demon from the Rontelgius family. And yes, it's because you have enough confidence to charge despite knowing this Murakan is here, right? In the past, before the Demon Society disappeared from the human world, Murakan had fought numerous demon dragons who had betrayed their kind. He had not once been defeated. Even against demon dragons known for their strength, he always achieved overwhelming victories, to the point where the best demon dragons of the four Duke families no longer dared to cross paths with Murakan. Murakan's reputation extended far beyond the human world. His name was equally revered in the demon society. However, Murakan did not recall any powerful demon dragon using the name Zephyrin. Is it because of my memory issue? Or is it someone I've never encountered? Even the most renowned demon dragons of that era got a beating from me at least once. Where has she come from? He couldn't make a quick judgment. Zephyrin casually turned her head to look at Jean and Murakan. Haha, you're still quite arrogant, Murakanim. You speak as if you know me. I have no memories of someone like you. Memories? Well, that's possible. Is there any dragon in the world who doesn't know you? You were the only dragon capable of ruling the beautiful blue sky of the human world in those times. That's why my attitude is not arrogant. Reveal your true name. I won't have to kill you unlike the leader. Instead, you will fall into a deep slumber with a broken heart once again. When you wake up again, you will see a world different from what you knew. Like this time. Tap. Suddenly, A purple energy emanated from Zephyrn's grip. Mana? No, it's different. It resembles something like when the deceased demon from the Rontelgius family cast an inexplicable magic, but this is much deeper and darker. Jean thought as he reacted to the spreading purple energy. What Zephyrn had released was not mana but demonic energy, and it was on a large scale, enough to make even Mirakan shudder. Demonic energy quickly enveloped the entire reception room, and Jean could instinctively feel that it was forming some kind of subspace. The demonic energy expanded, and Jean and Valkaz lunged at Zephyrn. Within the purple darkness, Sigmund's pale sword and Valkaz's fist's enormous aura trembled. Valkaz was known not only as one of the 3 great mercenaries but also as one of the greatest warriors in the world. Swish! Zephyrn struck the punch thrown by Valkaz with the battle-axe she carried on her back. A shockwave erupted the moment the fist and the sword-axe collided. If it weren't for the demonic energy covering the space, this single blow would have devastated most of the reception room. The subspace made of demonic energy appeared as a completely different and empty place, not like the reception room. Jean seized the opportunity and thrust his sword at Zephyrn's side, but she easily deflected it, wielding her battle-axe to counter his move. Both Jean and Valkaz felt an immense shock that pierced through their forearms. Zephyrn's seemingly effortless sword-axe strike caused pain and shock in both Runcandle's blessed body and the 10-star warrior's sturdy frame. Jean and Valkaz instinctively stepped back after the attack, and Mirakan exhaled a breath of shadow energy. This breath had the potential to destroy something as significant as a small fortress in a single blow, but Zephyrn resisted it effortlessly. She had a face full of laughter. "It's as warm as I've heard, Mirakan-nim." Mirakan didn't respond but formed black tendrils using his shadow energy on both wings and hurled them at Zephyrn. Jean and Valkaz went back and forth, darting through these tendrils, each time launching an attack against Zephyrn. As Jean watched the gracefully moving battle-axe, he felt a longing to see Luna. Zephyrn maintained composure and showed no signs of distress, despite enduring attacks from Jean, Valkaz, and Mirakan. She was the most powerful among the female opponents he had faced. Ahaha! She laughed playfully as she swung her battle-axe as if she immensely enjoyed the situation. Swish! Thud! The 2 swords, fists, and shadow energy interweaved, disorienting the dark subspace. To outsiders, it might have seemed like they were evenly matched. We're at a disadvantage even though it seems like we're on equal footing. The Black Knight was on the verge of death behind them. Of course, he was one of Joshua's men and had been sent to the Black King's Mountain to hinder Jean. But the Black Knight was undoubtedly one of Runcandle's main forces. Losing a Black Knight in that manner would directly impact the family's power. From a very strict perspective, he wasn't just one of Joshua's men. He was a person of the family's next patriarch. He needs immediate treatment from the Holy Queen and her healers, or from an expert poison master like Kazan. The Black Knight would be dead the moment he was stabbed by Zephyrn's nails if it weren't for his robust 10-star body. Even Jean, who had the 1000-poison antidote, could feel that he couldn't be completely immune to that dreadful poison. How long will the Black Knight hold on? Judging by his tremors and the foam coming out of his mouth, he wouldn't last much longer. Jean quickened his pace. The Black King was also on high alert because the Black Knight's death in his territory could pose a significant problem. Who told you that? Every single demon dragon who faced me back then is dead. That's true. However, maybe I was friends with some ordinary dragons at some point, right? Anyway, you might have been arrogant once, but now you're weakened and nothing more than an old veteran who can't forget his prime. You better fight properly, unlike how you fought at the Sword Emperor Castle. In response, Mirakan laughed again. Is that so? At that time, I couldn't fight freely because I had to protect those humans. But as much as you desire, I'll send you to hell. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Zephyrn's aura, infused with the demonic energy radiating from her battle-axe, tore through the surroundings erratically as she swung it. Mirakan's dark force curtain shattered, and Jean and Valkaz hastily stepped back and unleashed their sword energy. To any observer, it was undoubtedly a powerful and grand sword strike. However, Jean and the others had noticed that Zephrin's swordsmanship was strangely careless. It's undeniably fierce, but for some reason, her sword handling feels unnaturally clumsy. It's as if she's wearing ill-fitting clothes. She was excellent at blocking, parrying, and striking, but there was something unnatural in the way her sword moved. Of course, this was evident to Jean and Valkaz, who had reached a high level of mastery. It was almost impossible for anyone below the 8-star level to notice. Suddenly, an unpleasant and unsettling thought crept into their heads. Could it be that the battle axe is not her primary weapon? At first, they were too caught up in the heat of battle to realize that Zephyrin was using rather careless battle axe techniques. Intuition turned into certainty, and a chill ran down their spines. The three suppressed their bewildering thoughts, but Zephyrin seemed to see through them. Then, as if she said, "Have you finally figured it out?" She shrugged and said, "Well, I found it interesting and got curious, so I tried using it. Still, it's quite shabby, isn't it? Haha." She acted as if pretending to be human. Zephyrin had never trained well with the battle axe in her entire life. She was just curious to know what kind of weapon was used to bring down one of the demons she had to protect. Bang! Zephyrin playfully swung the battle axe in the air as if she had lost interest. She seemed to think that it would be challenging to kill them all with just this weapon. So, carelessly, she threw the battle axe to the ground, producing a loud thud. However you look at it, using something like this to destroy his heart would be disrespectful, Miracanim. Still, I'll make sure to send him into a deep sleep with a little respect. Chapter 446. Zephyrin 2. Dark and elongated nails sprouted from her fingers as Zephyrin hurled the axe sword. Those nails, which pierced through the black night, were Zephrin's primary means of attack. The menacing purple demonic energy of the nails was threatening. Zephyrin leaped forward with a sharp whistle. She flung her nails at Jean and the others. Jean blocked Zephrin's attack with his sword, while Valkaz intercepted it with a fist. The clash of sword, fist, and nails sent sparks and energy fragments flying in all directions. Using a familiar weapon has a profound impact on anyone. After discarding the axe sword, Zephyrin's posture and balance improved, and her movements became more agile. And the opponent who felt the strongest of all that Jean had faced became even stronger. However, the real issue was that this was not the end. She was a dragon. She had not revealed her true form yet, and her abilities as a demon dragon remained unknown. Based on the power she had demonstrated, she was at least a 10-star level by human standards. Jean came to think that she might rival his father, Siren Runcandle, the demigod. Fortunately, Jean did not feel the absolute power aura transmitted by his father and battle goddess Vaughn, although it was unclear whether it truly did not exist or if he simply could not sense it. Shack! Zephyrin dodged Jean and Valkaz and charged towards Mirakan. The purple nails pierced through one of Mirakan's wings. The nails went through a wing, and the wing rippled like smoke. However, Mirakan did not waste the moment as she closed in. In an instant, Mirakan's entire body turned into black smoke and enveloped Zephyrin. While the smoke reshaped into Mirakan's form, Zephyrin found herself trapped inside one of Mirakan's wings. It wasn't visible from the outside, but a chaotic vortex of shadow energy roared inside the folded wing. It pierced through Zephyrin's flesh and bones with a chilling sound, creating a gruesome spectacle. Just like how Mirakan had transformed into shadow energy to dodge the attack moments ago, Zephyrin also used demonic energy to evade the assault. Unlike human battles, combat between dragons had its unique characteristics. Well, you seem to be the best demon dragon I've encountered so far. Were you holding your breath in fear 1,000 years ago? I wonder where you came from. The purple smoke dispersed, and Zephyrin reappeared at a certain distance from Mirakan. Haha! How bold you are! How dare you evaluate me like that? It seems you still don't recognize me, Mirakanim. Swish! This time, a sharp demonic energy extended from Zephyrin's nails and slashed through Mirakan's midsection. Although the shadow energy form had dampened the impact, this type of shadow energy expenditure would eventually exhaust Mirakan. Even if I were dealing with you at your best, I wouldn't be so scared. The reason you don't know me well is that I couldn't fight against you back then. You couldn't fight with me? There were some circumstances. You should know them. No, how could you? PSHHH. The Sword of Legends Master Combat Technique, Petal Cascade, fell on Zephyrin's head, and Valkaz unleashed his punch at full force simultaneously. The subspace distorted due to the lightning and aura energy. The cascade crashed into the ground, and the punch broke the empty space. Zephyrin jumped to avoid the attack, but Muraken lunged like a hawk and released a dragon's breath. The black breath enveloped Zephyrin completely, but even after it dissipated, it seemed she had not taken a significant hit. However, just before the collision, Jin's thunder blade and Valkaz's secret technique were ready. Dozens of thunder blades and Valkaz's fists entangled with Zephyrin as she fell to the ground. This time, Zephyrin couldn't transform her body into demonic energy in time. The thunder blade pierced through Zephyrin's body, and Valkaz's fists hit her right in the middle of the back. Kook! With the sound of tearing blows, Zephyrin spat out blood and was sent flying to the other side of the group. For a human, it would have been a mortal wound with shattered bones and organs. However, Jean and the others had the intuition that she hadn't received such a critical blow. Even her cries seemed somewhat playful. Muraken transformed into a human and stood beside Jean. Muraken. Yes. Do you really not know who that demon dragon is? Well, I thought she might be one of the guardian dragons of the Rontelgius family that you killed, but it doesn't seem like it. Any guesses? A direct subordinate dragon of a demon god-level being. That's for sure. Can we win this? Jean didn't ask this question. It was because he saw Muraken with such a serious expression for the first time in a long while. In short, Zephyrin was an unexpected calamity. It puzzled Jean that there could be any connection between the seemingly weak demons he easily defeated in Joshua's villa and Zephyrin. Could she hold a grudge against me for the magical tome I acquired back then? When Jean and his companions first suspected that Zephyrin was a demon dragon at the Sword Emperor Castle banquet, they assumed she was approaching them because of the magical tome. If not, it seemed unlikely that they would have dealings with beings like demons or demon dragons. However, Zephyrin was acting as if the magical tome didn't matter at all. Or maybe she is planning to find out everything about me regarding the magical tome after she could subdue Muraken and kill the Black King leader. Wait a moment. Just as this thought was about to cross his mind, Jean recalled a crucial fact. Zephyrin explicitly stated that she would only kill the Black King leader. She mentioned subduing Muraken, and the situation suggests she is not here to kill him. Why would she go to such lengths? Jean was able to recall a conversation in a matter of seconds. I'll commend this ambush. However, you and your god will be the most important materials for the demon god orb, Jean Runcandle. These were the words Andre Zippel had said while using the demon god orb. At that time, Andre claimed that the power of Soldlet was the core of the demon god orb. Looking back, those seeking the power of the demon god orb or something equivalent tended to have a strange fixation on the contractor of Soldlet. Both Andre Zippel and Joshua Runcandle showed this fact. Moreover, considering that the creator of the demon god orb was Bouvard Gaston, the power of Soldlet probably held special value for them in their grand cause. That's why those Kinselo bastards kept trying to persuade me. Clank. Zephyrin was grotesquely contorted and shattered, but she regenerated and stood up in an instant. Her bones returned to their place, and the torn wounds disappeared. It seemed that no matter how much her body was torn and twisted, Zephyrin regenerated as if nothing had happened, similar to what the Kinselo leader had demonstrated during the terrorist attack on Sword Emperor Castle. Kinselo. Jean soon had the hunch that Zephyrin probably was affiliated with that group of lunatics. If it's from Zippel, then it's likely she moved with the Spectre Corps. However, labeling her as part of Kinselo doesn't make much sense. Zephyrin's actions have been completely different from what Kinselo showed me. Jean hated Kinselo, but Kinselo always showed a compassionate side towards Jean. Ambushing Jean unexpectedly like this clearly goes against Kinselo's attitude. I think she's the dragon of the Kinselo leader. That damn bastard? That might be possible. The authority he showed during the terrorist attack on Sword Emperor Castle was divine. This Murakanim 12th flag-bearer. It seems that this fight may not have an end if it continues. Jean nodded as Valkas said this. The Black Knight agonized behind them, and Zephyrn's body regenerated instantly even when twisted and torn. She showed no signs of fatigue. No end? It's much worse than that. We'll never be able to win against that. Jean and Valkas's eyes widened at Murakan's words. Jean, in particular, was even more surprised. He had never imagined that someone as proud as Murakan would so easily accept defeat. In any case, if Murakan spoke with such conviction, there was only one response. We should run. When Jean said this, Murakan nodded, and Valkas's eyes hesitated for a moment. This place was the Black King's mountain, and Valkas valued nothing more than the lives of his subordinates. Abandoning his subordinates and fleeing was an impossible act. Valkas believed that if his group fled, Zephyrn would not simply leave the Black King's mountain. She had the power to annihilate the Black King's mountain single-handedly in a matter of moments. The countless defenses and traps of the Black King's mountain were meaningless against such a fearsome dragon. I can't run, Murakanim. I know. Who abandons their children and flees? Then? I'll hold her off somehow so you and the brat guide the others to escape. I'll shake her off and meet up with you later. Murakan. What? Do you think you can handle her alone? Of course, neither Jean nor Valkas nor Murakan had yet used all their power. But they couldn't easily defeat Zephyrn even when all three fought together. It was natural to worry if Murakan could handle her alone. Ha ha! Suddenly, Murakan burst into laughter. Even in this state, I've recovered nearly 40% of all my strength. I can handle it even if it were a demon like Demon King Orgel instead of a dragon. I'm not so sure. Don't worry, brat. There's no way I'll be left behind. And after all, this is the best plan. Murakan pointed to one side of the subspace as he finished his sentence. First, let's break this subspace. You've done this many times. Do you know the method? Shadow energy. First technique, soul cut, and Tessa's power. When it came to cutting unwanted subspace from other worlds, these techniques and powers had never disappointed Jean. Woo! A massive amount of shadow energy began to accumulate around Murakan. Upon release, the entire purple subspace turned black. As the expression implied, the current Murakan was unleashing all his power. Hey Zephyrn, let's have a little dragon fight. Let me judge for myself if what you said about being able to stand up to me in my prime is true. Chapter 447. Zephyrn 3. Murakan rose and let out a roaring cry. The surroundings, imbued with demonic energy, trembled unstably, and traces of shadow energy leaked through the cracks. It was as if Murakan had transformed into a massive, black fire. His sharp, amber eyes displayed the majesty befitting the dragon that had once ruled the sky. Zephyrn smiled as if she had been waiting for this spectacle. Now you feel a bit more powerful. Quack! Murakan opened his dark jaws and exhaled a sigh. The shadow energy he exuded was incomparably more powerful than what he had released before fully utilizing his strength. Moreover, black veins, resembling breaths, peeled off from his wings and the curtain of shadow energy, spreading in all directions. Dozens of dark and shiny streaks struck the ground where Zephyrn stood. These streaks were like swamps. No matter how Zephyrn cut or slashed them, they would ensnare her again. It was akin to a pack of dozens of snakes entering a cave simultaneously. This was a true dragon battle. Valkas had seen dragons fight a few times in his life, but he couldn't help but feel that what was unfolding before him was on a completely different level. Just as there was an insurmountable gap between human warriors and magicians, he believed the same applied to battles between high-level dragons and ordinary ones. But even though he didn't know much about dragon fights, he could clearly see that Zephyrn had the upper hand in power. She had not yet revealed her true form. I don't know how long Murakan can hold out. We should prepare to escape as soon as possible, Jean said, holding on to Sigmund. Jean wanted to join the fight alongside Murakan, but it wasn't possible. Just as Murakin had finally begun to reveal his full strength, both Jin and Valkaz were brimming with untapped power as well. Especially in Jin's case, he hadn't used some of his cards, such as Ryal's Legacy and Sarah's magical sword technique, nor the sword technique of the Reign of the King of Legends. These techniques also yielded results regardless of the circumstances. Murakin was convinced he would never win, but if he used all his means, he might be able to defeat that mad demon dragon. However, the likelihood of that happening was extremely low, and Jin had no intention of risking their lives here. It was best to conserve all the power possible, destroy the subspace, and escape with the Black King's mercenaries. Even if they managed to defeat Zephyrin or inflict significant damage using all their power, there was a high chance they would die in the process. They needed to escape by any means. Then they would determine Zephyrin's true affiliation and purpose and devise a strategy. How many opponents of their level could there be? Jin wondered. A new era had begun. Since he met Jin, Ladaprok had often spoken of these thoughts with him. Suddenly, Jin sympathized with that sentiment. After the terrorist attack on the Sword Emperor Castle, Jin felt that enemies of a completely different level lurked in the shadows. Kinslow, Zippel, and Vermont. Vermont was clearly considered inferior to Runcandle among these three. Zippel was superior to Runcandle, and Kinslow had revealed his true power during the terrorist attack on the Sword Emperor Castle. Zephyrin is probably affiliated with Kinslow, and they may not have many dragons or humans with combat abilities at this level, but she probably represents a portion of their strength. A candle in the wind. This phrase perfectly defined Runcandle's current situation. Jin knew that Runcandle didn't have a hidden strength like the other factions. Of course, they had Siren and the former Black Knights, but they were all occupied with the Black Sea. However, the reason Runcandle was surviving was solely thanks to the existence of Siren Runcandle. Jin was convinced of that. The moment Siren disappeared, Runcandle would ultimately follow the path of destruction. The reason Mother strongly supports Joshua is probably because she believes he has the means to face these formidable enemies in the future. Crash. Murakin's shadow energy and Zephyrin's claws continued to clash and intertwine. The black veins grew stronger, while the traces of Zephyrin's purple claws faded. It seemed that maintaining the human form was becoming increasingly difficult for Zephyrin. I will pierce the subspace. Valkaz Nim, watch over the Black Knight. Understood. 12th Flagbearer. Shoot. Bradamanti's white sword emerged from its sheath. The shining sword was instantly stained black by the shadow energy. He didn't expect to have to execute it so quickly, and he wouldn't be able to use it for a while after successfully using it. Before piercing the subspace, Jin intended to open the door to La Ferosa. Although Murakin could currently hold his own, the situation would undoubtedly change once Zephyrin revealed her true form. As long as this subspace wasn't a dead space like Soderet's, there was no obstacle to executing the black light call. Whoosh! The blackened blade cut through the air. Thank goodness! Jin felt it as he wielded the sword, the sensation that the door to La Ferosa was opening. If there was anything slightly disappointing, it was that the warrior emerging from the newly formed black door was not one of the Battle Kings but an ordinary warrior. "Oh, this time it's me!" exclaimed Shaku cheerfully. He was the member of the Legends tribe with whom Jin had fought the most until he gained recognition from both Battle Kings and became his brother. Shaku was the one Jin had fought against more than 50 times until he finally emerged victorious. "I apologize for calling you, Brother Shaku." "No, it's an honor to fight for you, my brother. What do you want me to do?" Shaku slung his lightning-infused long sword over his back and spoke. Shaku of the Thunder, he had held such a title before the disappearance of the Legends. "Help him." "Understood. I have a rough idea of the situation. Do you need to clear a path here and escape?" "That's right." Shaku's gaze fell on Zephyrin, who was ensnared by the black veins. "A demon dragon, I suppose? It's been a while since I've seen such dreadful demonic energy. This situation should have called for the Battle Kings, not me. Hurry and escape. I'll do everything I can to restrain the demon dragon with the black dragon." Shaku joined the battle. Demonic energy and shadow energy once again mixed in a storm. Shaku wasn't discouraged even in the chaotic clash between demonic energy and shadow energy. Although Shaku was an ordinary warrior, he was still a member of the Legends tribe. The inherent strength of his body shone in such a chaotic battle. Watching this scene, Valkas couldn't help but be amazed once again. He had already witnessed Jean summoning ancient spirits of beast warriors in the Sword Emperor Castle, but seeing it again was as unfamiliar as it was fascinating. Moreover, it made him have similar thoughts to Lotta Proc. Irrespective of Zephyrin's affiliation and reasons, causing such chaos within the Black King's mountain, it might mean that there is no longer room for neutrality in the world. Given the current situation, it was evident that Zephyrin had reacted because of Jean and Murakan, but Valkas couldn't blame Jean for it. The Flagbearer and the Black Knight of Runcandle had come to the Black King's mountain for a meeting with him. They had unexpectedly been caught up in this danger. So ultimately, Jean and Joshua were in a position to be held accountable. First of all, I have to escape with the 12th Flagbearer and my subordinates, whatever happens, even if we have to abandon the Black King's mountain. Valkas thought this with a determined expression. The 12th Flagbearer, Jean Runcandle, will achieve what he sets out to do this time, as he always has. After reaching the 10-star level, it's the first time I feel this kind of confidence in someone weaker than me. Swoosh! Bradamanti's blackened sword was now surrounded by blue flames. Tess was still in the process of recovery and couldn't directly respond to the summoning call, but the overwhelming pressure of the blue flames engraved in Bradamanti grew stronger along with Jean. The blue flames emanating from the sword began to press against the demon energy-infused subspace. The subspace trembled under the pressure and seemed frightened like people. The sword, without the slightest tremor, slowly prepared to cut through the subspace. Up to that moment, Zephyrin had limited herself to defending against Murakan and Shaku's attacks. But for the first time, she showed emotions. Blue flames. Using such transcendent power against those beneath you is unfair, 12th Flagbearer. Just like Murakan and Quicantle had felt when Tess faced them for the first time. Zephyrin was also afraid of Tess's power. She also knew the majesty of Tess's power within the world of flames. This fear was something only those who had directly faced the master of the world of flames could experience. Wook! Perhaps because Zephyrin's attention had momentarily focused on the blue flames, or perhaps because she had reached the limit of what she could do in her human form. Zephyrin's formidable shield had been breached. Murakan's shadow energy and Shaku's lightning attack tore through Zephyrin's body as they dismantled it. Despite the relentless assault, Zephyrin didn't scream once. Purple demonic energy particles scattered in all directions instead of blood. It was followed by a long and eerie laugh. Ha ha, 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 ha. The sinister laughter suddenly ceased, and a massive purple smoke rose from the air. The smoke was many times larger than Murakan. He seemed small in comparison. Zephyrin's true form was hidden within the swirling smoke. She looked more like a serpent than the typical dragons known to the public. Oh really? These blue flames give me an uncomfortable feeling for no reason just by looking at them. You should put them out before I get angry and lose my patience. Zephyrin poked her head out of the smoke as she spoke. Jean didn't react to her words and remained focused. He needed to simultaneously execute the first Shadow Blade technique and Tessa's power to open the subspace in one stroke, just as he cut through Myron's Hellgate. Twack! Zephyrin seemed about to say something more, but Murakan shot forward like an arrow and used his claws to pierce her eyes. However, Zephyrin's eyes remained unharmed, and it was Murakan who was repelled by a counterforce. Curse! Why is she so tough? Murakan regained balance in the air and shouted. Instead of responding to Murakan, Zephyrin was preparing to unleash a powerful breath towards Jean. Chapter 448. Zephyrin 4. Whoosh! Zephyrin had ominous demonic energy swelling around her neck. Shaka shot lightning at her other eyeball, but it couldn't halt the building breath. It was just an exhale, but it contained incredible power, enough to astonish both Murakan and Valkas. However, Jean could remain calm, even though Zephyrin's breath was clearly headed toward him. It was because he had confidence. Zephyrin won't kill me, or she couldn't. Whether it was due to the demon god orb or something even more terrible, Jin's Solderet power was the most crucial element. As he deduced during his time as a provisional flag-bearer, both Zippel and Kinslow knew a way to transfer the god's contract. However, Jin believed the means might not be so straightforward. If it were easy, Zippel, Kinslow, and Joshua would have been more proactive in trying to kill him. If her goal was to annihilate us, she would have shown her power from the beginning. Zephyrin's breath power was certainly impressive, but considering the transcendent battle prowess she displayed, it was nothing unusual. Besides, it wasn't at a level that Jin and the others couldn't handle. In other words, Zephyrin had no choice but to forcibly control her strength to avoid killing Jin. Qua. Zephyrin opened her enormous mouth, and the subspace winds swirled wildly along with demonic energy, as if a storm had begun. An attraction and repulsion force emanated from the breath, and a purple breath beam headed towards Jin. Ugh! How annoying! Muraken descended swiftly and blocked Zephyrin's breath. The breath first touched the shadow energy curtain beside Muraken's wings before hitting the ground. Most of the demonic energy was absorbed by the shadow energy curtain, and the remaining fragments and other beams were pushed back by Shaku and Valkas. The entire subspace precariously trembled due to the combined power of the dragon and humans. It would be challenging for ordinary warriors even to endure the pressure of this battlefield. Every time the force clashed, their ears buzzed, and a shivering sensation ran through their bodies. Perhaps because the group handled it well, Zephyrin released a second breath infused with even more potent demonic energy. Although she had lived many more years than Muraken, like most of them, she had never experienced a battle like this before. To kill, crush ruthlessly, or annihilate without leaving a trace. Such battles weren't difficult, but, to Zephyrin, killing Shaku and Valkas, attacking Muraken just enough not to kill him, and capturing Jin alive were bothersome. Moreover, it was aggravating. Muraken's resilience far exceeded Zephyrin's expectations. She had heard rumors that he had partially regained his strength, but she had no idea it would be so intense. Zephyrin also began to see Jin's intentions. Sly bastard. You're very confident that I won't kill you, Jin Runcandle. The blue flames enveloping Jin sent shivers down her spine. Furthermore, it seemed those flames would soon tear apart a portion of the subspace. Suddenly, she thought maybe it would have been better to wait for another day and a better opportunity. She might have made a somewhat impulsive decision. I think I know why my master is paying attention to you. Boom! The second breath collided with the shadow energy curtain and was neutralized. Although it seemed like she was struggling to maintain defense, Muraken was slowly preparing to counterattack. It looks like you shot quite well, and the power is quite decent. Compliments don't sweeten the deal. Haha. Well, that's true. And this won't be sweet either. As soon as Muraken finished speaking, the massive curtain split into 3 pieces like shadows moving with light. One remained behind Muraken for his defense, while the other 2 took positions on both sides of Zephyrin. Due to the nature of shadow energy, Zephyrin was unaware that the curtain had extended to her sides. It's almost impossible to perceive shadows, no matter how vast they are. Her enormous body, several times larger than Muraken's, also contributed to the impossibility of checking the left and right shadow energy curtains. If you can't feel the flow of force, you can only confirm it with sight. However, Zephyrin's vision was limited, combined with the fact that her body was still mostly hidden by purple smoke. It also influenced Zephyrin's inability to perceive it clearly. She couldn't even see her own body, let alone the surroundings. What are you boasting about again? Ah! Zephyrin realized something was wrong when she saw demonic energy starting to leak from the shadow energy curtains that Muraken had extended to her sides. He was trying to shoot the absorbed breath through the curtains. The shadow energy, or rather, the shadows. This power not only had an efficacy at least 2 stars superior to that of aura or mana but also possessed another unique characteristic that normal powers could never imitate. It was to imitate or mimic something as if projecting shadows. What Muraken was doing by shooting Zephyrin's breath with the curtains was based on that principle. I really didn't like using this kind of method, but I have no other choice. It wasn't the method Muraken preferred. In the past, He had enough power to subdue someone like Zephyrin using the characteristics of shadow energy. On the other hand, Misha was good at handling the infinite excess of shadow energy, as demonstrated since her first encounter with Jean. I never thought the day would come when I would put into practice what I learned from that tough girl. This wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't recovered at least 40% of my strength. Humph! Murakin snorted mockingly, recalling Misha's insidious smile. Woo! The curtains on both sides made a sharp noise as they released demonic energy. This demonic energy was more potent than Zephyrin's exhaled breath combined with shadow energy. With Zephyrin's enormous body, avoiding the demonic energy was impossible. Ha! Where did you learn such unpleasant tricks? There was no time to deploy a protective shield. Zephyrin's colossal body was an advantage in most battles, but against such an unexpected attack, responding was uncomfortable. When the demonic energy struck Zephyrin's torso, it produced a thunderous crash reminiscent of a collapsing castle. The scales and bones of her massive body creaked and twisted, creating a spine-chilling noise that sent shivers down the spine. Arg! A scream echoed, seemingly impossible to hear. Receiving your own breath must be the first time for you, isn't it? Murakin spoke with an evil tone full of amusement, and Zephyrin writhed in pain for a while. Zephyrin moved her tail reflexively and exhaled her breath in all directions. She released demonic energy into the air. She tainted the subspace with poison. Murakin and Shaku pushed their senses to the limit as they dodged Zephyrin's fury. Even in Zephyrin's simple charge, they could suffer fatal injuries if they made a mistake. The two, jumping and flying between Zephyrin's swaying tail and the demonic energy, had the same thought in their minds. This could be their best, or perhaps their last chance in this battle. Valkaz, who had been protecting the Black Knight, couldn't afford to miss this moment. The three sought the wounds that Zephyrin had suffered before she could recover and tried to inflict more damage. Shaku screamed and shot lightning, while Valkaz gathered all his strength and delivered a punch. The lightning and the punch hit where the scales had torn. What appeared before their eyes was a terrifying spray of blood that was enough to make everyone, even those who had spilled blood on the battlefield their entire lives, pale. Ugh! Blood spurted like a waterfall from Zephyrin's torn flesh. The blood contained the poison that had left the Black Knight in a coma. Finally, Murakin flew through the poison, reaching the wound inflicted by Valkaz and Shaku. It was located around the middle part of the body, which could be compared to the abdomen in humans. In other words, it was a vital point that anyone would consider a vulnerability. Murakin infused all his strength into the wound, which was so deep it looked like a cave. Soon, a beam of shadow energy pierced through Zephyrin's body. It would be appropriate to say that her back was cut. Everyone felt that Zephyrin's spine was about to break under Murakin's breath. Ha! Ha! Afterward, Murakin took a breath and stayed in the air, and Valkaz and Shaku stayed below him, catching their breath. The battlefield, which had been incredibly noisy, had become so quiet that only the group's heavy breathing could be heard. It was an extremely brief silence. Zephyrin, who had remained motionless with her torso bent backward, let out a sigh and slowly raised her head. Well, this is surprising, isn't it? The demonic energy scattered around began to accumulate and fill the enormous hole in Zephyrin's abdomen. Her regenerative ability was so fast that there was hardly a way to intervene. It's hard to remember the last time I felt so much pain. Murakin was convinced that she wasn't completely unscathed. However, he judged that the damage she had suffered wasn't enough to prevent Zephyrin from continuing the battle. It seems we've caught quite a troublesome one. What could be considered luck was that Jin's will to traverse the spatial rift had just been completed. Zephyrin had been momentarily distracted by the unexpected blows and pain. Zephyrin's eyes darkened as she saw the intense blue flame burning in Bradamanti along with shadow energy. Bradamanti's sword created a bright and sharp trajectory in the dark subspace. Then, as if a dimensional portal were opening, the subspace expanded and revealed the outside. On the other side of that portal, they found themselves again in the reception room where they had started, with no objects destroyed and everything intact. And in the next moment, the group discovered something they didn't expect. one of Zephyrn's weaknesses. Her size decreased as soon as I cut through the subspace. They intuited it, and that was that Zephyrn could only transform into her true form in this subspace. Chapter 449. Zephyrn 5. The subspace cut by Bradamanti's sword burst like a dam. Zephyrn tried to return the subspace to its original state, but the blue flames clinging to the torn part of the subspace wouldn't allow it. The cracks repaired themselves and reopened, burning fiercely. The subspace reacted to the blue flames as if it were a living entity. The subspace emitted sharp screams with each crack, and purple demonic energy rained like rain. Zephyrn's appearance constantly changed as the subspace twisted. Her body shrank and contorted, taking on a grotesque form. It was clear evidence that her transformation only applied within the intact subspace. Ha ha. Murakan burst into laughter at the sight of her transformation. Despite his heavy breathing, it was evident that the situation seemed so amusing to him that he could barely contain his joy. Ho ho, you vixen! You were nothing when you were outside your domain. No wonder you were so strong. I've never seen or heard of anyone like you before. Ugh! Zephyrn let out a small groan. Apparently, she made a great effort to maintain her contorted form. Damn it! Blue flames, I had a bad feeling as soon as I saw that cursed power. Zephyrn hoped that Jean could traverse her subspace since he is the contractor of Soderette. However, she hadn't foreseen the profound impact this would have on her transformation and her control over space and demonic energy. The problem was that she didn't include the power of the blue flames in her calculations. The initial rupture of the subspace was due to the power of shadow energy, but it was the blue flames that prevented the rift from closing. Zephyrn also knew about Jin's contract with Tess. More specifically, she knew that Jean was Tess's contractor. However, she believed that Jin's ability to control the power of the blue flames was very limited. By the way, how on earth is he using such dense blue flames without even summoning Tess? Initially, when Jean first invoked the blue flames, Zephyrn hadn't considered this possibility. She felt overwhelmed by instinctive fear and aversion. However, the blue flames now tearing and incinerating the subspace were much more intense and profound than any other Tess contractor Zephyrn had encountered in the past. It was as if the Lord of the Flame World hadn't limited himself to lending a meager amount of power but had delivered a substantial part of himself. It could be. Zephyrn's eyes widened as her thoughts reached this point. Originally, I couldn't have improved the attack part more, but thanks to Tess's flames, a new power has been added before I realized it. They call it heavy pressure, probably. These were the words spoken by Pecan Minche, who had manifested through Vinbranch during the strengthening of Bradamanti. That day, Tess had permanently infused a part of his own power into the sword of the contractor. In other words, Tess wanted Jean to use the powerful pressure power of the blue flame independently of his presence or absence of mana, even when fighting a formidable enemy in any circumstance. Tess also intended to warn if Jean encountered a strong enemy who had crossed paths with Tess. Those who harm this child will become my enemies. The blue flame imprinted on Bradamanti was the seal and emblem of the Lord of the Flame World. Only those who had personally known Tess could recognize it. That the cruel Lord of the Flame World would grant his power to a mere human contractor was something Zephyrn couldn't even begin to imagine. As far as Zephyrn knew, human contractors were nothing more than tools for Tess's amusement and surveillance. Although there were some contractors who had pleased him from time to time, what Tess had done was undoubtedly unprecedented. Tess is an absolute being capable of eliminating at least a mid-tier god from the human world in a breath. Zephyrn realized and gritted her teeth. This is cheating. The power they couldn't give to my master, given to a simple human. Zephyrn's anger erupted so rapidly that she wanted to destroy everything she saw immediately. It would have been entirely possible if the subspace weren't crumbling. However, Tessa's actual flames showed no signs of extinguishing. Boom! She couldn't even breathe freely due to her distorted body. Murakan, who couldn't stop laughing, shouted, "Ha ha ha! Hey, what are you waiting for? Go and make mincemeat out of her." Murakan exhaled a black breath and signaled Valkaz and Shaku to jump forward. Shaku shot lightning and Valkaz released his aura. Jean protected the Black Knight instead of Valkaz. Zephyrin regained her form using her immense regenerative power, and everyone truly felt despair. However, if Zephyrin continued in this unstable state, it seemed worth attempting to escape now. They might enter into a life-or-death battle, but they could still escape. Ka! Zephyrin screamed as the group began their assault. The difference now was that the attacks from Jin's companions hit her precisely. Although she had lost all her combat capability, she wasn't totally defenseless. Every move she made was still a threatening attack to those approaching her. The demonic energy vortexes emanating from Zephyrin's body were also dangerous. The fact that the fight continued was because the group originally possessed exceptional combat power. Murakan's taunts became more persistent with each passing second. It would be difficult to distinguish who the villain was just by observing that sight. Die! For Brother Jean! However, the lively and rhythmic battle cries that continued like mature sesame seeds being scattered could be seen as a sign of the anxiety harbored by the group. Right now, they couldn't do it because of the subspace in flames, but they still had the ominous feeling that Zephyrin would eventually recover her strength and find a way. Too many cracks had opened. The subspace was no longer a complete and independent structure. Through the open cracks, they could see the scene of the reception room and the Black King's mercenaries standing with stern faces. Until Jean cut the subspace, the members had no idea what was happening inside the reception room, filled with demonic energy. Some of the members who felt the shock opened the door to the reception room, but all they saw was a purple demonic energy. The rest of the captains immediately declared a state of emergency. It's the leader. The leader is fighting. We have confirmed the well-being of the leader and the guests. Urgent voices of the members were heard. Almost all of the Black King's mountain personnel seemed to be in the reception room or nearby, preparing to join the fight. They seemed eager to enter the subspace and looked shocked at the sight of their leader fighting desperately. The tide of battle could change in favor of Jean and his group once again if the first division of the Black King's mountain joined. However, Jean still firmly believed that the goal of this battle was not victory but escape. He had no idea what might happen, and for now he was solely focused on burning the subspace with blue flames. The subspace was clearly the most advantageous area for the enemy. No, don't enter. Immediate retreat. What are you talking about? The members had no intention of listening to Jin's words, of course. However, when Valkaz, who had noticed his subordinates too late, shouted the same thing as Jean, the Black King's mercenaries immediately stopped their entry. Black King's mercenaries. From now on, follow the orders of the 12th flag-bearer until further notice. Before Jean started cutting the subspace, Murakan told Valkaz that he would deal with Zephyrin and ordered him to escape with Jean and the subordinates. Although the opportunity was there, Valkaz decided he couldn't escape leaving Murakan behind. As the leader of the Black King's mercenaries, it was unthinkable to rely on others to protect his subordinates. My lord. Understood. The members didn't question Valkaz's orders. This was a testament to how reliable the leader was. You? Ugh. Ka. Suddenly, Zephyrin released explosive demonic energy with a tearing roar. Then, she transformed back into her human form, giving up her true form. It was more efficient to maintain a human form in the unstable state of the subspace during combat. Zephyrin was now fighting for her life. Sharp demonic energy emanated from her nails as she began to rampage. And that wasn't all. The blue flame is slowly weakening. Even if it goes out completely, it won't be the same as before because it has already suffered too many blows. By then, Jean and his group were also exhausted, so the fight became even more dangerous than before. Therefore, they needed to evacuate the Black King's mountain members as soon as possible. I'll shred all of you, pests. This absurd situation wouldn't have occurred if only the master had been okay. Zephyrin felt her chest tighten as she thought that. Although she wasn't comparable to Murakan, Zephyrin had also weakened due to her master's deteriorating condition. Of course, both of you play a significant role in why my master's condition has worsened lately. Murakan snorted again when Zephyrin used profanity instead of her formal speech. It seems people like you are destined to show their true colors sooner or later. Hey, brat, don't worry and escape with the others. 12th flag bearer, I entrust my subordinates to you. Go now, brother Jean. Jean nodded and replied, I'll get everyone to safety and meet you again. No need for that, so we'll meet at home. Nyeh. The ruby glowed, and Shuri was summoned. Shuri immediately took the fallen Black Knight into her mouth, as if she knew the situation even though Jean didn't say anything. Nya. With Jean on her back, Shuri ran through the subspace, through the cracks. The air of the human world tickled Jin's nose. The Black King's mountain members waiting in front of the subspace greeted Jin's arrival. Give your orders, 12th flag bearer. We will evacuate all members. The 3rd Division will prioritize securing supplies. The 2nd Division will help evacuate the wounded and non-combatants. The 1st Division will cover the escape of everyone. Detailed instructions will be given by each captain and their subordinates. Understood. When Jean gave the orders, the members quickly dispersed. The cracks and flames of the subspace visibly diminished behind them. Chapter 450. Zephyrin, 6. And bring healers and poison masters who can detoxify immediately. The Black Knight no longer trembled. He only exhaled weak breaths of air and seemed on the verge of death. Members carefully carried the Black Knight. We must keep him alive at all costs. If he dies, it won't be good for the Black King's mercenaries or for me. Especially the situation of the Black King's mercenaries will become even more complicated. Don't worry, Jean Nim. 3rd Captain Morka replied, and healers and doctors from the Black King's mercenaries crowded around the injured knight. On the contrary, if we manage to save him, it will be a great advantage for both me and the Black King's mercenaries. If the Black Knight died in the Black King's mountain, it would provide Joshua with a pretext to pressure Valkas, regardless of the circumstances. However, if the situation were reversed, it would be Valkas who could demand compensation, not Joshua. Jean wouldn't lose the most powerful asset of his family, and maybe he could even negotiate directly with the Black Knight. We've saved people in worse situations before. We will definitely keep him alive. Clang. The medical team began emergency treatment, and as soon as they rushed out, an unexpected explosion followed by tremors shook the entire Black King's mountain. Shadow energy? Demonic energy. An aura erupted through the narrow subspace crack like a volcanic eruption. Since Jean had escaped the subspace, the battlefield had become even more chaotic. A monster is a monster. It's revealing more power even though it's severely outnumbered and cornered due to the subspace rupture. Murakan had thought that it wasn't necessary for Jean to return, but he was still worried. He needed to evacuate the Black King's mercenaries as soon as possible and then join the battle. What kind of battle is raging inside there? Are you sure Zephyrin was really that monster? The 2nd captain expressed his despair with a somber voice. The sight of Zephyrin, transformed into her human form, fighting against her leader, Murakan, and Jean was utterly unbelievable. Lately, Zephyrin had been the troublemaker of the Black King's mercenaries. She made life difficult for all the veteran members and administrators. However, on the other hand, she was the youngest member who, despite getting scolded every day and getting into trouble, couldn't help but spread her unique lively and cheerful energy, making it hard to dislike her. However, that Zephyrin had now turned into the monster that was putting the Black King's mountain in an unprecedented crisis. The sudden appearance of the enormous serpent form that occasionally revealed itself sent shivers down their spines. Valkas Nim was very worried that his subordinates, including the 2nd captain, might have been attacked by Zephyrin. Has anyone among the Black King's mercenaries been attacked by Zephyrin? Absolutely not, 12th flag bearer. That's a relief. Valkas's greatest concern hadn't happened yet. If we manage to evacuate everyone without casualties, then I can expect a positive outcome when Valkas Nim and I negotiate later. Kaya. Zephyrin's roar echoed from beyond the cracks. It was a distant sound, but even those who hadn't experienced it personally could imagine the power of that roar. The evacuation was speeding up. Although something like this had never happened before, Like all castles, the Black King's Mountain had numerous special passageways, devices, and instructions for evacuation. Stairs extended throughout the hideout, and magical devices were activated to transport supplies. It was quite a spectacle despite the urgent and grim situation. Like a giant organism, the huge fortresses lined along the mountain range moved. Without interruption, Jean came out of the central fortress, where the leader's reception room was located, and observed how the Black King's mercenaries were evacuating. Hundreds of special ropes connected the fortresses and allowed people and supplies to move between them. The fortresses moved tirelessly, like intricate mechanical devices. The steep mountain ranges surrounding the fortresses were equipped with various mechanisms. Every time a distant rumble was heard, an avalanche occurred near the fortresses, creating a slide path. Non-combatant staff and supplies descended down the mountain with the help of these paths. Meanwhile, several defensive shields were deployed around the fortresses. These were not the work of the members but magical defenses established by the Black King's mercenaries. There were so many shields that it was difficult to count them all. This is just what I can see, so I can't even begin to imagine how much was invested in these defenses. It took more than money to get equipment like this. The Black King's mercenaries had contacts with magical tool artisans from both the Empire and the Lutero Magical Federation. Being a neutral faction and a mercenary group allowed them to achieve this. For magical tool artisans, offering these items to Runkandle is nothing more than an act of betrayal. Most of the magical tools that Runkandle used for war were obtained as battle spoils. The evacuation was proceeding smoothly. As expected from the world's best mercenary group, the Black King's mercenaries showed excellent coordination even in their first experience in an emergency. The mountain with the fortresses had collapsed almost completely. Most members had already completed their evacuation downwards, while Jean, the leader, and the officers hung from the created ropes and observed the central fortress's battlefield. Precisely, they were watching the collapse of the central fortress. Who? Leader. The force penetrating the subspace crack was turning the central fortress into dust. Although the blue flames attached to the crack had significantly decreased from before, the power of the blue flames continued to tear the crack very effectively. It seems like the subspace will be completely torn soon. What would happen next? Zephyrin wouldn't be able to return to her original form, but the battle would continue. She possessed at least a 10-star level of strength even in her human form. However, this fight wouldn't last much longer. Zephyrin had taken multiple hits and was exhausted, while Jean and Valka's group were also tired, so it would be a short-lived battle. We can't kill Zephyrin here. The members are safe for now, so it's best to withdraw without causing fatal injuries to ourselves. Despite their exhaustion, it was unknown what other abilities Zephyrin still possessed. Given the shocking display of her power, the tide of the battle could change drastically. Moreover, if the battle extended beyond subspace, external forces would undoubtedly intervene. The Black Mercenaries were a neutral faction that everyone was watching. If a major battle occurred in the Black King's Mountain, nearby factions would surely become aware. She probably created subspace from the beginning and did not kill the second captain and subordinates because she wanted to handle this discreetly. The hideout of the Black King's Mountain was located in the unprotected region of the central continent, the Bice Kingdom. The Bice Kingdom did not belong to any of the 4 major factions, but geographically, it was quite close to the territories of Zippel and Vermont. Recently, Kinzelo's relationship with those factions had not been very friendly. If Zephyrin has in mind that they might come, she will undoubtedly choose to escape. While Jean contemplated this, the sound of subspace tearing finally reached his ears. Jean and the members of the Black Mercenaries raised their heads to witness the central fortress collapsing. The view of the barely visible battlefield through the cracks was too chaotic to get a clear picture of the internal situation. Ha! The first to emerge from the rift was Murakan. He roared triumphantly and then exhaled his breath towards the emerging Zephyrin. Jean silently breathed a sigh of relief after seeing this. He's unharmed. However, when he saw Valka's and Shaku, especially Shaku's condition, Jean felt his heart tearing apart. Shaku looked severely injured, to the point where he struggled to stand. Jean had not witnessed the battle directly, but he immediately realized that Shaku had sacrificed himself in the fight. He was a guardian composed of soul and shadow energy, so Shaku's death or injuries were not real. Therefore, Shaku had no reason to hesitate in sacrificing himself for Jean and his comrades. The outcome would have been the same even if Shaku's body had been real and not composed of shadow energy. It was the brotherly love of legends. Brother Shaku. There was no need for apologies or expressions of gratitude. Shaku responded to Jin's voice. Their gazes met, and a faint smile formed on Shaku's lips. Make sure to tell me about this later, Brother Jean. Shaku's body dispersed into particles of shadow energy, and Jean clenched his teeth. The time had come to end the battle. Keep protecting the members, captains. It was much more effective to protect them than to fight together. Shadow energy and blue flames gathered again around Bradamanti. Jean wanted to execute the shadow sword technique immediately, but there was a risk that others would be dragged into it. Jin's sword fell on Zephyrn's forehead with a swift movement. Zephyrn easily blocked the blow with her claws, but she seemed quite pressured by the blue flame in front of her nose. Then, her energy appeared to weaken noticeably. She still retained immense power, though it was weaker than her true form. Clang! Bradamanti clashed with Zephyrn's claws, and sparks flew. Murakin switched between his true form and human form, providing support to Jean, while Valkas focused on regulating his breathing. Although not as serious as Shaku, Valkas was also gravely injured and poisoned by Zephyrn's venom. Zephyrn fought against Jean and said, "Jean Runcandle, you bastard! Why don't you act arrogantly like before, as if you could kill us at any moment?" Zephyrn narrowed her eyes at those words, but shortly after, she regained her composed smile and said, "We'll meet again, Jean Runcandle." "Yes, you always say that before running away." While Jean tried to continue speaking, suddenly, Zephyrn's entire body started to swell with a purple glow, as if it were about to explode at any moment. It wasn't just Jean who felt it. Before Murakin could shout, Jean had already distanced himself and was heading towards Valkas. "Goodbye, then." Bang! Zephyrn's swollen body triggered an explosion. It caused a powerful earthquake throughout the mountain. The explosion wiped out all traces of trees and rocks at its epicenter. Although it seemed like the enormous explosion would sweep away the entire Black King's Mountain, the real destructive power was not on an apocalyptic scale. Zephyrn had no intention of killing Jean from the beginning. She initiated the explosion simply to facilitate her escape. Fortunately, the Black King's Mountain was well equipped with various magical defense devices, and Jean, Murakin, the captains, and their subordinates still had strength. Block it! The 12th flag-bearer protects. The leader, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd divisions protect each other. The demonic energy explosion had shattered the mountain range, and most members had already evacuated. If they hadn't, it would have been catastrophic. Jean, Murakin, and the Black mercenaries fought desperately to protect themselves from the explosion and its consequences. In particular, Murakin used the remaining shadow energy to create curtains in various places on the mountain, saving many lives. Crazy. You never stop being a pain until the end. The phenomena of the explosion, landslides, earthquakes, and more did not cease until almost an hour had passed. In the end, the group managed to avert the explosion with minimal loss of life. However, the once majestic Black King's Mountain was now completely destroyed, buried under debris, and the cries and sobs of the Black mercenaries filled the areas under the collapsed mountain range. Murakin, still floating in the dark night sky bathed in shadow energy, looked at the Black mercenaries with a somewhat pitiful expression. For those who knew the full story, it was clear that his appearance stemmed from a sense of sorrow. The personnel and dragons sent by Zippel and Vermont had just arrived and detected the battle, but they could not immediately comprehend the situation. What is happening in the Black King's Mountain? Murakin? Could it be Murakin? Brother Murakin? Did brother do this? Murakin. If it's Murakin, then maybe Runcandle's 12th flag-bearer did this to the Black mercenaries. The newcomers from Zippel and Vermont were deeply confused as they witnessed the scene of destruction and Murakan in the black sky.